Hello teacher, my name is Nell Ashley Suerte, and in this video presentation, I will be showing you what I did and the projects that I made during this quarter. Second quarter for me was a fun experience. I learned new things and did a lot of activities. One of these projects I did was the tabernacle. The tabernacle is one of my lessons in Old Testament. The tabernacle, also known as the tent of the congregation or also tent of meeting, was the portable earthly dwelling place of Yahweh, the God of Israel, used by the Israelites from the Exodus until the conquest of Canaan. Moses was instructed at Mount Sinai to construct and transport the tabernacle with the Israelites on their journey through the wilderness and their subsequent conquest of the Promised Land. After 440 years, Solomon's temple in Jerusalem superseded it as dwelling place of God. As we can see right now, these are the pictures of the replica of the tabernacle that came from the Bible. It is not really the exact look, but you can get the idea of what it was. When making the tabernacle, thanks to some of the topics I learned from the other subject like geometry and family consumer science, I was able to finish the tabernacle. I will explain them to you later how it was able to help me, but before that, let's talk about the lesson I learned from the book of The Power for True Success. For the power for true success, the topic that I choose is contentment. Contentment is happiness and satisfaction. Not because you have everything you need, but you are satisfied by what God has given you. Contentment is important because contentment promotes simplicity. It teaches you to be happy with what you have, whether little or abundant. Instead of wanting your possession to grow, start working on personal growth. Sometimes a mental health condition can make it more difficult to feel a sense of contentment or inner peace. I can apply this in my life by being content for what I have already. It does not mean that I don't desire anything else more, but for me, I am contented for the family and life that God has given me, and that I am happy for what I have now. I can say it's not how much we have, but how much we enjoy, and grateful for the smallest things in life. That makes real happiness. Moving on to physical education, the topic contentment can also be applied in sports. Whenever I have a competition and I don't get any single award, I apply contentment. Instead of being discouraged and feel bad about my performance, I tried to be contented for whatever place I got. I always tell to myself that in competition, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. What matters most is you give your best. I know to myself that I did my utmost. I sacrificed most of my time to train hard to prepare for my competition. If I lost now, there's always a next time to try again, my hardest, so be contented and enjoy the race rather than be disappointed. Sports is an extremely popular hobby for people all around the world. Each country has their own famous sports, and France is no exception to that. In today's presentation, I will be discussing one of the most famous sports in France, which is cycling. Of all the locations in Europe to plan a cycling trip, why choose France? It is not just the food, the wine, the history, champagne, beautiful villages, or weekend markets, although these enhance the choices. Above all these things, France is simply a paradise for the recreational cyclist, making it the ideal bicycling destination. A slow, leisurely cycling vacation along the canals and waterways in France is the perfect antidote to our hectic, fast-paced world, a time to breathe and relax, savoring the simple things in life. So whether you are looking at a bit, a little, or a lot, whether you are 20 or 60, whether you are traveling with kids or without, if you are looking for a vacation that could change and renew your life. Another reason why France is famous in sports cycling is Tour de France. Tour de France is the world's most prestigious and most difficult bicycle race. Of the three foremost races, the other being Giro d'Italia and Vuelta a España, the Tour de France attracts the world's best riders. Staged for 3 weeks each July, usually in some 20-day-long stages, the tour typically comprises of 20 professional teams of riders each and covers some 3,600 kilometers or 2,235 miles, mainly in France with occasional and brief visits such as countries as Belgium, Italy, Germany, and Spain. Although the race may start outside France, as was the case in 2007 when England hosted the opening stage for the first time, it always heads there quickly. The Tour is France's premier annual sporting event and world as one of the supreme tests of athletic endurance. Part of the difficult cyclists face in that Tour is that it is divided among time trial racing and racing stages covering both flat land and great stretches of mountain inclines. It is a rare cyclist who can perform well at both time trials and climbing. And those who can usually wear the yellow jersey, maillot jaune of victory at the end of the race in Paris. France is not only famous for its cycling there are more famous sports that people do in France, not only in France, but also the whole world. This teach me that sports is an important hobby for us humans and it became part of our daily life. Next in my presentation is English. English was a helpful subject to me while making my portfolio. Thanks to our lesson selecting and limiting a topic, I was able to pick a topic and limit my presentation to the right quantity. And it helps me pinpoint the topic and make it clearer to understand. One of the primary functions of language is to communicate thoughts and feelings. This lesson helped me describe my feelings about an idea, an issue, or a situation. Since feelings are difficult to pinpoint, they are even more difficult to make clear to someone else. The most important step in the process of speaking occurs before the words are spoken. Proper planning is essential to ensure that your message is clearly understood. After careful thought, you will be able to choose and limit suitable topic for your speech. Careful planning also involves organizing your topic by outlining it. Beginning something often seems difficult. Remember your first day of school or your first attempt to ride a bike. Being confronted with the task of finding a topic for speech may be particularly challenging. Even if your audience is only one person, you still must select a topic that you can clearly explain. Because of this lesson, I was able to carefully choose what topic I can discuss in other subjects. Like for example, for my book Power for True Success, I select the word contentment and connect it to my PE project to be able to explain it further and be understood clearly by my audience by using only limited topic. Moving on to the presentation, I am going to continue where I last stopped from the book Around the World in 80 Days. But instead of continuing the summary, I will be giving the analysis of the things that happen in chapter 6 to 10. To watch the presentation of the analysis of Around the World in 80 Days, chapter 6 to 10, copy the link in the screen. Going back to the project I made, the tabernacle, I will be explaining to you how geometry and family consumer science were able to help me in making this project. And I will also be explaining to you how they can also be help to you in another real life situation. Let us start first with geometry and how it was able to help me. Trigonometry, the branch of mathematics that describes the relationship between angles and lengths of triangles. Help early explorers plot the stars and navigate the seas. Nowadays, trigonometry is found in everything from architecture to zigzag scissors. You may be surprised to learn just how often trigonometry and its applications are encountered in the real world. Much of architectures and engineering relies on triangular supports. When an engineer determines the length of cables, the height of support towers, and the angles between the two when gauging weight loads and bridge strengths, trigonometry helps him to calculate the correct angles. It is also allows builders to correctly lay out curved wall, figure the proper slope of a roof or the correct height and rise of a stairways. You can also use trigonometry at home to determine the height of a tree on your property without the need of climbing dozens of feet in the air or find the square footage of a curved piece of land. In my project, I was able to use trigonometry in a lot of ways. For example, the tent and the roof of the tabernacle. By using trigonometry, I was able to determine the length, the height, and the angle that would fit properly for my project. I also used trigonometry to give details to some of my materials that I use for the tabernacle, for example, the zigzag side of the burning altar. Trigonometry plays a major role in our daily life. Without it, the world would not be the same as it was. Although geometry plays a major role in my project, but without the help of the lesson I learned in family consumer science, I would not have finished my project properly. One of the lessons that I learned from family consumer science that helped me is sewing. Sewing is a craft of fastening or attaching objects using stitches made with needles and thread. Sewing is one of the oldest of the textile arts, arising in the Paleolithic era before the invention of spinning yarn or weaving fabrics. Archaeologists believe Stone Age people across Europe and Asia sew fur and skin clothing using bone, antler or ivory needles and thread made various animal skin parts including sinew, catgut, and veins. As we studied sewing, I learned the basic of stitching. My mom gave me a scrap fabric to practice. Aside from the tent and the walls for my tabernacle, I also made a cool looking background for a picture frame. I sewed together the scrap fabrics, print my favorite coat, and put it in a frame. And that's it. From simple and easy sewing, I made an awesome picture frame perfect for our living room. The lesson in biology that I focused more on this quarter was cells. I learned all the things about different types of cells like animal cells and plant cells, division of cells, reproduction, inheritance, and more about cells. In today's presentation, I will be talking about plants. And the project I've been doing since I started these lessons, which is taking care of a plant and how plants can grow. Taking care of plants is no easy job. It's like taking care of a baby. You need to give your full dedication and time to it. Without giving your best of taking care of it, it won't grow properly or it wouldn't even grow. For the project that I did in this quarter, I took care of an aloe vera plant. You could say that aloe vera plants are super easy to grow and there's really not much to it. Yours might just do better if you ignore it. They thrive on neglect. But there are few things you need to do to keep it growing its best. The first step in aloe vera plant care is to realize that this plant is a succulent. Like cacti, succulents do best in dry condition. When growing aloe vera plants, plant them in a cactus potting soil mix or a regular potting soil that has been amended with additional fertile or building sand. Also, make sure that the pot has plenty of drainage holes. Aloe vera plants cannot tolerate standing in water. One important thing in taking care of aloe vera houseplant is that they should have proper light. Aloe vera plants need bright light so they can do their best in south or west facing windows. Another important aspect of how to grow an aloe vera plant is to water the plant properly. The soil of the aloe vera plant should be allowed to go completely dry before being watered. When the aloe plant is watered, the soil should be truly drenched, but the water should be drained freely from the soil. The most common reason an aloe plant dies is that the owner water too often or do not allow the water to drain. Do not make this mistake when taking care of aloe house plant. You can fertilize your aloe vera, but aloes generally don't need to be fertilized. If you decide to add fertilizing to part of your aloe vera plant care routine, aloe vera plant should be fertilized once a year in the spring. You can use phosphorus heavy, water-based fertilizer at half strength. Growing aloe vera houseplant is not only easy, but you can also provide your family with a plant that can help treat minor burns and rashes. Learning about this topic gave me a lesson. Taking care of plants is a hard job, and I am thankful that there are people who do this job every day to grow plants to feed millions of people, and we should be thankful to them. Talking about the tabernacle made me realize that the tabernacle was one of the first ever church ever made and worshiping place for the people before. Thus, in my world history, the topic that I will be presenting is churches from Renaissance era and how they affect the modern churches today. During my research on this lesson, I discovered that churches from the Renaissance era have a ton of similarity from the modern churches today. I dig in for more sources on the internet, and that is when I discovered that modern churches architectural today was greatly influenced by the Renaissance period. Renaissance period architecture was a major influence on building design, and it is an era that modern architects still regularly study. As part of their course, the creation of great churches, monuments, and buildings filtered down to even modest residents as shown by Palladio and his villas. One area where Renaissance changed the landscape was the increasingly ornate churches where many of the classical themes used by Renaissance artists were developed. The main deviation from the original cruciform design used during the earlier Gothic medieval period was the belief that the circle was the most perfect structure and the sphere is the most perfect solid, leading Renaissance architects including Michelangelo and Da Vinci to incorporate this principle into their work. Alongside Palladio, Sirio and Vignola also contributed to the architecture of that time, laying down mathematical rules for proportion, scale, and symmetry that would influence European architecture for centuries. The Renaissance style spread from Italy across Europe, and modern architects still study the form and style of this crucial period, with the great buildings and structure representing pinnacle of Renaissance art philosophy, and science. More than anything, the architecture of this period defines the prevailing thought of the time, perhaps eclipsing even the great Renaissance artists, scholars, and philosophers. Certainly, the Renaissance saw architects elevated from craftsmen to artists, but the most of these architects were also skilled mathematicians and geometers, applying these skills to their work. As we can see in today's modern church, we can contrast some of the similarity that come from the Renaissance period. I learned from this lesson that the Renaissance era was an important era for the church. It is the era of where modern churches' architecture came from. Without this era, the churches today would not have looked the same as it was. For my last subject in the second quarter, I will be discussing one of the topics that I learned in Introduction to Network System, the WAN network, and how does it help billions of people all around the world. In its simplest form, a wide area network or WAN is a collection of local area networks or LANs or other networks that communicate with one another. A WAN is essentially a network of networks, with the internet the world's largest one. Today, there are several types of WAN, built for a variety of use cases that touch virtual every aspect of modern life. How did wide area networks start? The first known one was created by the US Air Force in the late 1950s to interconnect sites in the Semi-Automatic Ground Environment or SAGE radar defense system. An enormous network of dedicated phone lines, telephones, and modern link the sites together. The foundation of the IP-based internet started with the Advanced Research Project Agency Network or ARPANET, the first wide area packet switching network with the distributed control, and the first network to implement TCP or IP protocol suite. ARPANET initially interconnected the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, the Stanford Research Institute, now SRI International, the University of California, Santa Barbara or UCSB, and the University of Utah. What is a WAN router? A WAN router is also known as an edge router or border router, is a device that routes data packets between one location, giving an enterprise access to carrier network. Several WAN protocols have been developed over time, including Packet over SONET or SDH, POS, Multi-Protocol Label Switching MPLS, ATM, and Frame Relay. If one connection didn't exist, organization would be isolated to restricted areas or specific geographic regions. LANs would allow organizations to work within their building but grow to outside areas. Either different cities or even different countries would not be possible because the associated infrastructure would be cost prohibitive for most organizations. As organizations grow and become international, WANs allow them to communicate between branches, share information, and stay connected. When employees travel for work, WANs allow them to access the information they need to do their job. WANs also help organizations share information with customers as well as partner organizations such as B2B clients or customers. Moreover, WANs also provide an essential service to public. Students at university might rely on WANs access to library database or university research. And every day, people rely on WANs to communicate, bank, shop, and more. Not only that, but because of WAN, people around the world who are working abroad for their families can communicate to them via WAN connection app. This helps a lot of people to stay in touch with their family even if they are hundreds of kilometers away. Without one, there will be less people who would be willing to go across the globe to work for their family because they are afraid that they won't then be able to communicate with their family anymore. That's all from my second quarter presentation. I hope you enjoyed the presentation and liked the video. Thank you.